Welcome to Cigar City Radio, episode number 58. I'm your host, Randy Ojeda, and making the magic happen, a man who can't get enough of Thanksgiving leftovers, Mr. Jason Solanas.
You know what else I love?
Oh, no. What?
The Thanksgiving beer. See, I don't even have to. I don't have to bleep that, really.
You should.
Not really.
Probably should. You should probably bleep it. The Cigar City Radio podcast is now available on Spotify. That's right. Spotify, in addition to music and videos, has now expanded into podcast offerings, and Cigar City Radio has been chosen by Spotify to be part of their podcast selection. So if you go to the Spotify app and you type in Cigar City Radio, you will find not only the Cigar City Radio companion playlist, but now the Cigar City Radio podcast in full, every single episode. And of course, you can also follow Cigar City Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Cigar City Radio. Our guest on this episode is Slowdive. Slowdive was formed in Reading, England in 1989 and considered to be one of the most influential shoegaze and dream pop bands of all time. The band reformed in 2014 with touring runs across the country. Earlier this year, they released a new self-titled album via Dead Oceans. Led by singles Star Roving and Sugar for the Pill, it's making many a music writer's year-end lists, including my own. Album of the year, record of the year, Slowdive is a very strong contender, so check that album out. Our licensing coordinator, Michelle Soto, and marketing intern, Christopher Kahn, caught up with Slowdive before their performance at Janus Landing, where Slowdive was the headlining act of the 2017 Et Cultura Festival. So big shout out to Michelle and Chris for handling this interview. I had to attend my cousin's engagement party, so I love you, Drew. Shout out to you, but you made me miss Slowdive. But it's okay, because I ate a lot of food at your party, so we're all good. But Michelle and Chris stood up admirably and took the reins of this one. Had a great interview with the band. Thank you to Leah Umberger from Et Cultura for making this one possible and hooking us up with the Slowdive team. And thanks to Slowdive for being on the show. I'm sure they put on an amazing show. I heard from countless people who were there that it was awesome, but I was at an engagement party. So here it is, episode number 58.
Hi, this is Simon from Slowdive, and it's great to be touring in North America again. We came back in 2014 and did like a reunion tour, but this is since May the 5th or 6th, I think it is, since the new record was released. We've done I think we've done a month now, and to answer your question directly, the music industry has changed immensely. I think there's definitely a massive drop in music sales, but more people are going to shows, or at least more people are coming to see us. I think when we first played in the States, we played with a band called Blur from the UK, and we played really small clubs. Maybe the biggest was like 600 or something like that. Whereas on this tour, when we played in California, we sold out a few venues that were 3,000 capacity, which is mind-blowing for us. But there's still some really good record labels. There's some really amazing music. And, so more people are coming to shows. And, I think we were really lucky because in 2014, when we reformed, the money that we earned from playing the reformation shows, we put back into the band rather than giving ourselves like a check. We just thought, well, we want to make a new record, which was always the intention. Let's put the money into paying for a studio so we can basically try to record a new record. And we managed to get a whole bunch of tracks together. And that came out in May. So that's fun.
And just to touch on that, were you surprised when you did come back in 2014 for that tour, like how how many venues you could fill? Like, how many people still are looking for Slowdive tickets? They want to see you guys live.
Very surprised. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, pleasantly surprised. We had no idea when we were asked to reform, which was initially by a Spanish promoter. They do a really nice festival called Primavera in Barcelona. And they basically somehow got in touch with Neil and Rachel and said, look, you should think about reforming the band because there's a big audience for you. And we started rehearsing for that show and had one or two others in Europe planned. And we had no idea that anybody was still interested. And we genuinely didn't, because we had no idea how many people had kind of gone onto YouTube or, you know, on researched us online or bought our downloads and stuff. I mean, we signed to Sony back in 91, early 91. I remember the five of us put pen to paper and they kind of took all the rights. So like our albums have been reissued on vinyl and we had no figures, no idea how many we'd sold. And I think because of the press reputation, you know, with Slowdive like sort of being slightly derisory about us, we kind of thought people don't really care anymore. So we were surprised to be asked to reform, but we all wanted to kind of play together after so long. And and then to come over here and to reform and play shows anywhere really, because we did here, we did Asia and we did the EU, and to actually see, you know, like thousands of people turn up to see us play was really incredible. And very surprising, but yeah, you know, it felt like a big relief when we got to play those shows and there was a good audience for us, you know. And for us, it was super flattering and astonishing and wonderful.
With the reforming in 2014 as a reunion and releasing a record now, which is the first in 22 years, you've been touring and you said that this was the last stop of your tour. My question is, what does that demographic look like in your crowd? Has it changed? Is it does it look like it's a lot of the same fans from the 90s, or are you seeing an age difference? Are you seeing maybe a younger crowd base?
It's basically amazing to look out and see a young demographic mixed with an older demographic. So when we reformed, generally I would say there was mainly older fans who were like, yes, go get a chance to see Slowdive. I was like, I saw them back in the day and I want to go and see them. But since releasing the record or maybe releasing like Star Roving as a single and then the album this May, we suddenly have people turning up to the shows and chatting to us after saying, we never knew you were an old band. We heard like Sugar for the Pill or Star Roving on the radio and then, you know, bought your record a week ago and we've just come to the show and we had no idea you formed in the 1980s. So for us to be able to kind of keep the older fans happy is really cool, but to have much younger people into the band it's really flattering and it's really inspirational for us that sort of we're not just playing to an older crowd. And when we reformed, we never wanted to be a heritage band and just like be playing to a bunch of 40-somethings who, you know, I was there in 1991 at the Windsor Old Trout. It was great. There was only 100 people there and I was at the front. You know, we want it to be like, you know, teenagers and people in their 20s. And I mean, we've been meeting a bunch of people who are like, we've just formed a band because we heard Slowdive on the radio and we just bought your record and we want to make this sound and there's something about it we love. And that's, for all of us, kind of one of the highest kind of complimentary kind of things that we hear because we've inspired them to make music. So, you know, if we've kind of just helped them to be inspired to make some music or some art or whatever it is, then it's it's a big deal for us. So it's a really good question. Yeah.
Going back into the studio after 22 years of not being in it, you guys obviously have gotten older, have had children. So what was the songwriting process like?
Well, to be honest with you, Neil wrote all the lyrics, and he plays his cards very close to his chest when it comes to discussing lyrics. I think he likes to write kind of, it's almost kind of like poetry, but very sort of vague imagery for people to identify within their own way. He's never really specific about people or places. So he would have to answer that. And I don't think he'd answer it directly. He'd probably just tell you what I said there. He just kind of paints a bit of a picture and lets you find your own world or identification with it. But I mean, the whole process was basically we finished doing the kind of whole reformation tour and booked some studio time. Started to jam. Some of those jams he then took down to his studio in Cornwall, and he'd bring them back to us and we'd kind of flesh them out. And there was a few songs he wrote on his own, and he'd just say, look, you know, I've kind of got a rhythm section part in my head, and Rachel, can you sing this harmony with me? And so he very much kind of wanted to do this record, like, just let me drive this. And, you know, he's such a talented songwriter that we kind of said, right, okay, well, let's jam ideas, but if you want to bring songs to us, then we'll happily just flesh them out. So that was the kind of process, really. You know, we'd have a bit of a jam. He'd take them back to his studio, work on them, bring them back. Then we'd re-record them. And there was, I guess, the one song out of the whole album which kind of had that ping pong thing was Slow Mo. So he initially brought in a demo and said, I've got this idea, but I don't know if it's any good. Then we worked on it, and he'd take some of those ideas back to Cornwall and say, okay, well, I've sort of changed it, and then bring it back to us, and we'd then change it again. Then he'd take it, and it kept being changed and kept kind of developing, and it wouldn't, like a lot of the other songs, come together very quickly. It just seemed to take a year and a half to get that song right, and then finally we found something from that process that just made it like, we've got it. This now sounds exactly how it should sound. But I mean, back in the day, it was a similar process, really. Neil would write on his 4-track on an acoustic, and then we'd work on it as a band. Then we'd go in the studio. But some of the songs are collaborative, where we just set up in a room like this and just start recording and playing. And so Go Get It was like that, where it was kind of just us jamming. And I mean, everybody dips in and out. I co-wrote Falling Ashes with Neil, and that was me on my laptop bringing in some new music software, which we didn't have available back in 91 or 93 or whatever. So, like, technology's played a little sort of part in developing the Slowdive sound. It is, yeah. And I mean, like, music technology now is so cheap and so sort of easily obtainable. You can just sit down with a laptop and use GarageBand or Logic or whatever it is and kind of edit and splice and loop and manipulate sound. And so we've got a few interesting ideas sort of out of that, working that way as well. So it's kind of evolved, but it's essentially Neil's the main songwriter still, and that process hasn't changed too much.
This is your only show in Florida. How have you liked it so far? Yeah,
the weather's great. We were in Toronto a week ago and it was minus 16 and we hated it, even though we're from England and it rains and it's freezing most of the time. Yeah, we've had a stroll round and it's lovely. We were told there was a serial killer on the loose. So, I mean, that sounds kind of weird. So we're kind of all like, you know, walking around in groups, trying not to walk off into dark alleyways and stuff. But, I mean, yeah, this is the end of the tour. We're going to come back next year and do a few more dates. But, you know, rather than come back and play, you know, Pensacola and Jacksonville and Tampa itself and you know, and then head over to like New Orleans and do the places in Texas and stuff we haven't played, we actually really want to do a new record. And what we found in 2014, 2015 was we kept saying yes to all these offers, which is very flattering. Thanks for inviting us. But at some point we have to say, look, you know, we need to start writing and we need a month away from being on the road to actually like get in the studio and start working on new ideas. And I think just from the five of us sitting around and just discussing what we want to do in the next 2-3 years, we don't want to do another record that's exactly like this one. We want to progress and experiment a bit more. So it would be lovely to play every major city in Florida, in Carolina, in Texas, you know, but it's, you know, it's impossible. And like you said, we've all got families back at home that we need to go and say hi to our children. And we're going to Japan next month and then Christmas off, then Australia, New Zealand and stuff. So there's not enough hours in the day. And that's one of the things about getting older. You realize there's so much you want to do and you kind of can't say yes to everything, which is kind of one of the sad facts about life. But we're trying to do as much as we can anyway. So you mentioned 2 to 3 years from now. So we should expect more Slowdive and not just touring, but maybe some more records. And we won't have to wait 22 more years for you guys again. Yeah, another 22 years. I don't know if we'll all be alive in 22 years. I mean, we are getting on a bit now. No, I think just through whatever reason, record label, the climate back in the 90s and stuff like that, it had to kind of end. But we're having fun doing this. We're really inspired by, the people that are digging the music, all the different ages which we've discussed. And we definitely want to go sort of use this momentum of playing lives and being quite a tight live band now and go into the studio. We're all inspired by synths and music technology and how certain styles and genres of music that weren't around then are around now. And we're still music geeks. We still buy a lot of music. We listen to everything and anything. And, the Slowdive album's come out and it's been pretty successful and we're really grateful about that. But we want to push it now, do some new stuff, and it's not going to be 20 odd years. Hopefully it's 2 to 3 years, something like that. It might even be a year. We might go in the studio and just like hit the ground running, and 6 weeks later have like 40 minutes of music we want to put out. So I'm not too sure. We don't want it to be contrived and discuss it too much. We just want to plug in and play.
Slowdive is like a very legendary band. Like, you guys are giant in the music industry, and you're very influential to a lot of artists. So I just want to get your opinion. What are the artists that you're listening to now? Like, they don't have to be current. They could be, could be Can or anything.
It is Can, actually. We love Can. That's such a difficult question. Well, I've done a mixtape on this tour. Even though we're doing a festival today and it's not playing on this tour, we did a mixtape. So before the support and then between the support and us, we play our sounds. And just to reel off a list of people, there's Arthur Russell on there, there's Sleepover, there's Nigel, there's a Fenez remix of a Nine Inch Nails track, Holy Other, Eve's Tumor, there's Cluster, an old kind of krautrock band. There's a Can track in there, a Noi track in there. There's I'm just trying to remember who I put on this list. I mean, we listen to everything. We love electronic music. We love ambient music. We love krautrock stuff. We love 60s garage stuff. We like folk music. There's John Fahey, who ran the Tacoma label. There's a John Fahey track. Jack Rose, James Blackshaw, who's a modern day kind of finger picker. He plays a 12-string guitar. James Blackshaw's on there. Loop Spaceman 3. Cocteau Twins are on there. Also, I mean, like, we listen to hip hop and we listen to techno, we listen to some classical music. Rachel loves Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Nick still loves The Cure. But and we do loads of record shopping, and some of the records I've just bought, there's a guy called Lee Gamble who's like a new kind of electronic artist who's based in the UK, is worth checking out. There's a label called 12K, a label called Pan, a label called Touch. There's so much good stuff. I mean, but there's a few in there for people to check out if they want to go and see who Eve's Tumor is, or who James Blackshaw is, or go and buy some old Cluster stuff. There's so much good music out there. Not enough hours in the day. Christian from Slowdive's about to join the party. Yeah, so. These guys were just saying about our influences in Can have come up. You've got a band called Monster Movie, right?
Yeah, when me and my buddy sort of were going to make some music together, we kind of had the idea we'd try and do something krautrocky. But actually, even though that kind of music sounds really simple, we actually found out actually it's really difficult, and especially difficult that they do it so well, and they kind of pioneered it with a load of other bands. So we ended up just going back and just doing simple indie pop because that's what we know. So yeah, krautrock's not as easy as it might seem.
So that's Christian from Slowdive talking about his band Monster Movie. You need to go check that out. It's good stuff.